This is still a very iconic movie, and so far, it is the best werewolf movie that has ever been made, but there is some things that have not aged the best, and I do have some minor criticisms of this movie. Though, first off, I do want to say the doctor in this movie reminds me more of Doctor Who than an actual doctor. He just really kind of acts like Doctor Who. I could see him playing Doctor Who. But now about the actual movie. We don't actually see the werewolf that much in this movie. We get to see a werewolf about, I think, 12 minutes in that kills his friend Jack. And that's it. Takes almost an hour in to finally see a werewolf again, and we don't really see much of it. The transformation is amazing of when he turns into a werewolf. It still holds up to this day. It's a very good transformation. But yeah, we really don't see the werewolf that much. Almost all the deaths until the out in the open city massacre are off screen. There is the pretty terrifying chase scene where the werewolf is chasing the man on the subway. That is still a scene that holds up. The last time I watched this movie was 6, maybe 7 years ago when I was younger, and it terrified me, so rewatching it when I'm older and I've watched a lot of horror movies now, it's not as scary, but there are stuff that are scary still in it, obviously, because it's a horror movie. I still think that the howl they use for the werewolf in this movie is bone chilling. We only hear it twice, but it's a really good howl. It's very scary. But yeah, most of the deaths are off screen. There's 3 homeless people that get killed. We later see the makeup and special effects of how they died in a porno theater of all things, when his friend Jack is telling him about like the undead and stuff, and all of his victims that he's killed so far in the movie are there. So we get to see like the makeup and stuff of what happened to them, but we never actually see them die on screen. But unlike most movies, they actually did put a little bit of effort into it. So I guess it's not as bad. But the subway scene was pretty cool. I do think it would benefited more from an on-screen death, because the werewolf is slowly creeping on him once he fell on the escalator. And then the scene just kind of ends. It sucks. Oh, and then there's, of course, this couple that are going to meet their friend Sean. And instead of going, a normal way, just straight up the steps into the apartment, they want to go play a prank on him, so they go through the back. Which, unfortunately, the werewolf is there. So they get killed. Now, before we talk about some more positives, I'm gonna have to talk about a negative. And that is, when David tries to get himself arrested, there are some words that should definitely not have been used. When he tries to get himself arrested, he decides to use offensive things. That's like the whole point. He's trying to offend the officer to get him mad enough to arrest him, which doesn't make the most sense, but he's trying to offend him. And he says some very awful things, like, he says Queen Elizabeth is a man, which isn't that bad, but it's still, pretty bad. That's clearly blatant transphobia. And then, right after, He says Prince Charles is a F slur. And he says the F slur. After that, and it's not as bad, he just says a bunch of bullshit. But that should not have been in the movie. I get it's an older movie, but still, it's ridiculous. I hate when I watch a really good movie and then they have unnecessary shit in it. But yeah, the werewolf costume actually looks really good in this movie. Amazing. But yeah, we don't see much of the actual werewolf until the massacre scene, which we actually do see a lot of on-screen deaths once we get to the massacre scene. Some guy gets his head bitten off, one police officer gets crushed in between two cars that are going all crazy because of the werewolf in the streets. And then another person gets ran over. There's a lot of gruesome deaths. So they clearly had the budget to do it. I don't know why they killed all those people off screen. But yeah, the movie ends with the girl he was kind of dating in the movie trying to convince him to come with her when she's a fucking werewolf. And she says, "I love you," which is a reference to an earlier scene in the movie where he said, "I love you," and I don't think she said it back. And then the cops shoot it because it lunges at her. But it doesn't bite her. So it didn't set up an unnecessary sequel, unlike most movies. Which I'm pretty sure this movie didn't get a sequel. I'll have to look. If it did, it's probably not. It did. An American Werewolf in Paris. I don't know, I've never heard of it. Well, I bet it's not good. But yeah, this movie is really amazing. I just don't like that scene. I really don't think it should have been in there. We do get a scene where we get to learn more about David's family. But that doesn't really lead to much, since it's like the only scene about it. He tries to call his parents. They're not home. They left their daughter home alone. Which, very good parents of them. We find out that she's only 10. And then he basically tells the 10-year-old that he's gonna kill himself. But, since she's 10, she doesn't realize what he's saying. He tells her to tell the parents that he loves them. And then he says goodbye and hangs up the phone. He tries to kill himself, but he can't, since it's not a silver bullet. Though for being, one of the most iconic werewolf movies in all of werewolf cinema, I guess, is what you would call it. They do mock the actual idea of a werewolf in one scene. I don't remember when it was, but they bring up the silver bullet thing and mock how that was dumb, which is crazy to me. I didn't think one of the most iconic werewolf horror movies, was gonna mock the idea of a werewolf. But the whole reason it's called An American Werewolf in London is simply because he got transferred to a hospital in London, and that's where the movie takes place. Which, since this movie is iconic and considered a cult classic, the name's kind of grown on me. But I think if it was any other movie, I probably would have made fun of the name, because it's kind of dumb that you would simply name the movie the place where it takes place. Like, for instance, maybe Twilight. I don't know. How about Dracula? Yeah, what about Dracula? Let's say the events took place in Boston or something. Dracula in Boston probably wouldn't sound the best, would it? But since this movie is so iconic, a lot of the people do like this name. But yet, that scene was really unnecessary. But yeah, I guess that's about it, because it's a relatively short movie, and like I said, the werewolf isn't exactly in most of the movie. I just hope I find some better werewolf movies, where people eventually start to make better werewolf movies. Because I do plan on making a top 10 werewolf movies, best and worst. Those are obviously going to be separate videos, and I plan to do that with zombies and stuff like that. So I'm trying to watch more werewolf movies, since I've always been a fan of werewolves anyway. They're probably my favorite fictional monster. There's just something so cool about the idea of a werewolf to me. So, yeah, I guess that's about it.